Episode 1, The Cleanest Brick on the Boulevard. Hey there, it's Alex, and this is Chrome and Gasoline. Today, we're hanging out with one of my favorite contradictions on four wheels, the 1961 to 1965 Lincoln Continental. It's a luxury car that somehow looks like a rolling monument and still manages to be stylish rather than a parked office building. Long, low, rectangular, and yet strangely graceful. Like a marble sculpture that decided it wanted a driver's license. To understand why this thing hit so hard, you have to picture what came right before it. The late 1950s were the era of tail fins, chrome rockets, and styling done with a ruler in one hand and a science fiction comic in the other. Big overhangs, mountains of trim, fins tall enough to cast shade. Then, all of a sudden, Lincoln shows up in the early 60s and says, "What if we stopped yelling?" The Continental's designers took a deep breath and went the other way. Clean slab sides, flat flanks, minimal chrome, tight overhangs. The body looks like it was carved from a single block, then carefully scored with just enough lines to keep it interesting. Every crease has a purpose. It's long, but not messy. It's big, but not loud. It doesn't scream. It just calmly takes up half the block and assumes you'll notice. That slab-sided look is the whole mood. No wild curves, no fins, no flashy gimmicks. Just a long, straight shoulder line running from headlight to taillight, and sheet metal that appears laser straight decades before lasers were part of the design process. Parked at the curb, a 1961 to 1965 Continental looks like modern architecture that escaped the drawing board. It fits right in front of a glass office tower, a mid-century house, or a fancy hotel awning. And then there are the doors. The rear-hinged rear doors are the Continental's party trick. Open all four at once, and the car becomes a moving stage. The rear doors swing toward the back, earning that slightly dramatic nickname everyone knows. They look theatrical, a little dangerous, and incredibly cool. Step out of the back seat and you don't exit the car, you make an entrance. Of course, from the driver's seat, those doors feel a little bit like a trust exercise. You're hoping everyone latches things properly, because that's a lot of door swinging into the wind. But for passengers, especially in the back, they're genuinely practical. The opening is wide, the sill is low, and climbing in feels more like walking into a private lounge than getting into a sedan. Set all of this against the backdrop of the early 1960s, the so-called Camelot era, polished suits, sleek modern furniture, and big American optimism. Lincoln needed to reinvent itself, to go toe-to-toe with Cadillac not by out-chroming them, but by outclassing them. The Continental became Lincoln's statement piece. We're still big, we're still luxurious, but we're grown up now. On the street, a 60s Continental has a kind of calm authority. In its day, it was a serious luxury machine. Today, park one next to a modern crossover, and it absolutely dwarfs it in presence, even if the dimensions aren't wildly different on paper. Parallel parking, one feels less like a driving maneuver and more like planning a small construction project. You don't just park it, you negotiate a treaty with the curb. Yet despite all that size, it never looks cartoonish. The proportions are too well judged. The hood is long, but not absurd. The roofline is low, but formal. The rear deck is neatly trimmed. Every angle gives you another taste of that quiet confidence. It's the rare luxury car that looks both imposing and calm at the same time. So in this first stop on our little Lincoln journey, the big takeaway is simple. The 1961 to 1965 Continental was a design reset. Where everyone else had been chasing fins and flash, Lincoln built a clean, confident brick on the boulevard and turned it into art. Next time, we'll talk about what's hiding under all that sheet metal, because a car this heavy doesn't move itself. I'm Alex, this is Chrome, and Gasoline, and we're just getting warmed up. Episode 2, Under the Slab Sides. Welcome back. It's Alex with Chrome and Gasoline. Last time we talked about the 1961 to 1965 Lincoln Continental as the cleanest brick on the boulevard. Today, we're lifting the metaphorical hood and talking about what actually drags that monument down the road. because hopes and mid-century furniture catalogs do not power this car. Under that long, flat hood lived big V8s from Lincoln's MEL family. Think large displacement, lots of torque, and an attitude that says, "I will move this house, just don't rush me." In the early 60s, you'd find engines around the 430 cubic inch neighborhood powering these Continentals. As the decade went on, similar big MEL V8s grew even larger, with displacements like the 462 appearing in the mid-60s Lincoln lineup. The themes stayed the same: smooth, quiet force instead of high-rev fireworks. These engines weren't interested in screaming their way to redline. They were more about a deep, effortless push. Press the throttle and the car doesn't lunge, it glides harder. The whole experience feels like an elevator that's very sure of itself. You don't really floor it in a Continental. You make a polite request for more momentum, and the big V8 grants it without losing its composure. Bolted to that torque is a big automatic transmission with 3 forward gears, tuned with one mission: keep everything calm. Shifts are smooth, almost invisible when the car's healthy. No neck-snapping drama, no performance theatrics, just quiet steps from one ratio to the next. It's the sort of transmission that seems personally offended by the idea of a harsh shift. The layout is classic luxury American, rear-wheel drive with that big engine up front and a long drive shaft heading to the rear axle. What's not so typical for the era is the unibody construction. Instead of a separate frame, the body and structure are integrated, which helped give the Continental its solid, almost carved feeling. Combined with a long wheelbase, everything works together to create that famous Lincoln float. You don't so much drive a 60s Continental as pilot it. The suspension is tuned for comfort, not autocross glory. The car smooths out bad pavement, expansion joints, and minor road sins, as if it's been instructed not to bother the passengers with anything as uncivilized as reality. Power steering and power brakes play their part too, making it surprisingly easy to guide this big rectangle around, at least once you get used to the size. Inside, all that mechanical effort is wrapped in luxury. Imagine a deep, dark exterior color, like a rich black or metallic blue, with pale leather seats and thick carpets that absorb the world's problems. You sit behind the wheel, look down that long hood, and the drivetrain is busy turning gasoline into serenity. The engine and transmission are working, the unibody and suspension are cooperating, and you sit there enjoying the illusion that traffic is something happening to other people. Of course, there's a price for moving a heavy, unaerodynamic mansion with a big V8. Fuel economy is character building. If you're the kind of person who checks gas prices daily and collects fuel points like trophies, this is not your spirit animal. The Continental is more of a fill it up, don't ask, and let's go kind of companion. You measure the smiles per mile, not the miles per gallon, but that's the magic of this setup. Big V8 torque, a gentle 3-speed automatic, rear-wheel drive, unibody solidity, and a long wheelbase all work together to create one feeling: effortlessness. You don't buy a 60s Lincoln Continental to save anything except your own stress levels. Next time, we'll step out from under the hood and into the cabin to talk about what it's like inside this rolling living room, especially if the roof happens to fold away. I'm Alex, this is Chrome and Gasoline, and the brick on the boulevard has a very soft couch inside. Episode 3, Living Room on Wheels. Hey, it's Alex again with Chrome and Gasoline, and today we're opening the door of the 1961 to 1965 Lincoln Continental and stepping into what is basically a mid-century living room on wheels. If you've ever looked at one and thought, that seems like a nice place to sit still, you're absolutely right. The only twist is that it also moves. The first thing you notice inside a Continental of this era is space. Big, broad seats that feel less like car chairs and more like sofas that were tailored up for a road trip. Wide armrests invite your elbows to relax. The dash stretches out in front of you like a control panel from a stylish 60s lounge. Clean horizontal lines, tasteful chrome, and gauges laid out with a kind of quiet confidence. Materials matter here. Leather that's rich without being gaudy, bits of wood and chrome applied like accents instead of decorations thrown from a moving truck. You get the sense somebody thought about where every switch and dial went. The cabin feels curated rather than crowded, even though there is no shortage of things to touch. And there are a lot of things to touch. Power windows, power seats, power door locks, power antenna, and on the convertible, a power top system that is legendary for both its complexity and its drama. Sit in the driver's seat of a well-optioned Continental, and you're basically the captain of a very polite ship. The first time you slide behind the wheel, you spend a good minute just looking around, thinking, I wonder what that switch does. Colors seal the mood. Picture a car in deep presidential-style black with a light ivory leather interior, the contrast making the cabin feel even more spacious, or a soft metallic blue exterior over matching blue leather, like someone turned a calm ocean into upholstery. You also saw whites, silvers, and elegant greens, often paired with interiors that echoed or complemented the paint. The whole car feels color-coordinated in a way that makes modern black over black seem a little lazy. Now, about that convertible. A four-door convertible luxury car is already unusual. To then give it those dramatic rear-hinged rear doors and a power top that disappears in a carefully choreographed sequence. That's not just engineering, that's a flex. The mechanism is intricate, with panels and framework moving in a sequence that feels like a slow magic trick. From the outside, the finished look is astonishing, a long, open four-door luxury car, gliding by with no visible roof, like a parade float that grew a V8. From the owner's perspective, that same complexity means you treat the top switch with respect. It's a fantastic party piece, but it's the sort of thing you want adjusted by someone who knows which relay does what. Still, when it works correctly, the payoff is enormous. Top down, windows dropped, 4 big doors, and a full complement of passengers, all surrounded by leather and chrome, while the world gets a free show. Driving from inside this cabin is its own exceptional experience. You're surrounded by soft surfaces, powered everything, and have enough switches to confuse a new driver. It's very easy to picture someone sitting in the driver's seat for the first time and asking, does this button raise the antenna or launch the garage door into orbit? It feels more like piloting a small yacht through traffic than driving a sedan. The Continental's interior is where the design, engineering, and luxury all meet. It's not just about being transported from A to B. It's about doing it in a space that feels intentional, comfortable, and just a little bit theatrical, especially if the roof folds away. Next time, we'll step out of the cabin and look at how these cars live in the wider world, presidents, pop culture, and what it's really like to own one today. I'm Alex. This is Chrome and Gasoline, and we're just getting cozy in this rolling living room. Episode 4, Presidents, Pop Culture, and Owning One Today. Welcome back. This is Alex with Chrome and Gasoline, and today we're talking about the 1961 to 1965 Lincoln Continental, out in the wild. This car didn't just live in driveways and dealer showrooms. It ended up on some very serious streets and some very famous screens. When people think of early 60s Continentals, a lot of minds go straight to Washington. These cars were closely associated with U.S. presidents and high-level officials, especially in limousine and parade form. Images of long, dark Lincoln convertibles rolling slowly through city streets, flags on the fenders, and suited passengers in the back seat are burned into the historical record. It's a connection that gives the Continental a certain weight, a sense that it's not just a car, but a witness to essential chapters. You also see these Lincolns pop up in movies, TV shows, and photo shoots whenever someone wants to capture that specific mid-century cool. Clean lines, serious presence, and those dramatic doors. Directors and photographers love a car that looks stately, just sitting still. The Continental is basically instant production design. Park one in the background, and the scene suddenly feels more expensive. So what is it like to own or drive one of these today? First, you have to accept that this is a big car from a different era. The size and weight are real. On a modern highway, it actually settles in pretty nicely. Long wheelbase, smooth suspension, and that big V8 make it a fantastic cruiser at reasonable speeds. It's when you exit the highway and start threading your way into tight parking lots that you remember you brought a rectangle to a world built for rounded crossovers. Parking is an adventure. You spot a space, you aim carefully, and then you gently guide several thousand pounds of mid-60s Lincoln into a spot that was probably measured using a compact hatchback as a reference. You learn to check your mirrors, your surroundings, and possibly your horoscope before committing to a parallel parking attempt on a busy street. Mechanically, ownership is a mix of luxury and responsibility. The big V8, the automatic transmission, the power steering and power brakes can all be reliable if maintained, but you're dealing with components that have been around for decades. Parts are generally available if you know where to look, but this is not a car you fix with whatever you find at the corner store. Having a good mechanic who understands older American luxury cars is practically part of the ownership checklist. Then there are the power features, and on convertibles, the top. Power windows, seats, locks, and antennas are wonderful until age catches up and something moves slower than it should, or not at all. The convertible top, with its elaborate mechanisms, needs respect, careful adjustment, and sometimes patient diagnosis. It's not a reason to avoid the car, but it is a reminder that you're caring for a complicated piece of history, not just transportation. As for driving one daily, most people treat a 60s Continental as a special occasion car. You can drive it regularly if you're committed, but it's not the same experience as hopping into a small modern car with great fuel economy and tiny turning radius. You wouldn't use a grand piano as your coffee table. You could, but that's not really the point. In terms of collectability and desirability, these cars sit in a sweet spot. They're respected, visually iconic, and tied to an era that still fascinates people. Values vary with condition, originality, and body style, but the underlying appeal is stable, presence, elegance, and that unique combination of design, purity, and historical connection. At the end of the day, people are still drawn to the 1961 to 1965 Lincoln Continental because it makes every trip feel like an event. A grocery run becomes a slow parade. A Sunday drive turns into a small chapter in your own personal history. In our final episode, I'm going to tell you my own Lincoln story, because of course I have one. I'm Alex, this is Chrome and Gasoline, and I'll see you in a moment for a little personal confession involving a very long car and a very small parking lot. Episode 5, Alex's Lincoln Story. Hey, it's Alex with Chrome and Gasoline, and for this last episode of our Lincoln Continental mini-series, I'm going to do something dangerous. I'm going to tell you the truth about the first time I tried to park one. A friend of mine had a mid-60s Continental sedan in a dark, almost inky color with a pale leather interior, one of those cars that looks like it should come with a security detail. He called me up and said, "I need a favor. The Lincoln has to go from my storage unit to a downtown hotel for a wedding. You love old cars. You want to drive it?" This is the kind of question you don't answer with words. Your soul hits the throttle. So I show up at the storage unit. The metal door rolls up, and there it is. A long, low slab of 60s Lincoln, sitting under a dusty car cover. We pull the cover off, and the car looks like it's been waiting for a motorcade that got delayed by a few decades. I open the front door and you get that smell you only find in older luxury cars. Old leather, a hint of fuel, a little bit of time. The door closes with a heavy, precise sound that makes modern doors seem a bit thin. I slide into the driver's seat, and suddenly I'm small. The dash stretches out in front, the hood stretches even farther, and the rear deck feels like it's somewhere in a neighboring county. We fire up the big V8. It doesn't bark. It clears its throat, settles into a deep, quiet idle, and the whole car just hums. Drop the automatic into drive, let off the brake, and the Continental starts to roll like it was never supposed to stop moving in the first place. The power steering is light, the brakes are firm but friendly, and in a few minutes, I'm thinking, I could get used to this. On the highway, it's glorious. The car settles down, the big V8 just whispers along, and the world moves by in widescreen slow motion. You sit back in that big leather seat, one hand on the wheel, and suddenly every other car looks nervous around you. People stare, phones come out, thumbs point. You are not blending in, and the Lincoln is fine with that. The real plot twist comes when we get off the highway and arrive at the hotel. The entrance is busy, the valet area is crowded, and the only place to park this thing is a row of spots that look like they were laid out using compact rental cars as a template. I pull up, look down the endless hood, glance at the mirrors, and realize this is about to be a geometry exam. I start the turn, trying to swing the nose wide enough without taking out any decorative planters. The rear-hinged rear doors mean there's a lot of door line to think about, even when they're shut. People are watching. The wedding party is outside. There are cameras. Somewhere in the universe, the spirit of a Lincoln engineer is watching and judging my turning radius. After a couple of careful corrections, some creative steering input, and one moment where I was positive we were longer than the parking space itself, the Continental settles into place. I open the door, step out, and the car just sits there, calm and perfect, as if it didn't just make me sweat like an overworked valet. Later that night, driving it back out of the city, we took the long way home. The streets were quieter. The big V8 was still smooth, the automatic was doing its seamless gear changes, and the car floated over beat-up pavement like it was erasing the road as it went. The dash lights glowed softly, the leather creaked just a little, and for a few miles, it felt less like I was driving a car and more like I was borrowing a piece of history. That's what the 1961 to 1965 Lincoln Continental means to me. It's beautiful, a little intimidating, occasionally inconvenient, and completely worth the trouble. It turns simple drives into stories. It carries the weight of its era without feeling trapped in it. And every time you close one of those doors, you're reminded that someone once decided luxury should think like this. So that's my Lincoln story. I'm Alex, and this has been our Continental tour on Chrome and Gasoline. Thanks for riding along with this clean, elegant brick on the boulevard. Until next time, keep the tank at least half full and the stories even fuller.